Good morning. It is Thursday, the 19th of March. I'm Maeve McMahon and you're watching Europe Today, your daily dose of European news and analysis, live here on Euronews. Coming up, EU leaders are gathering in Brussels today for their regular spring summit. On the agenda, not one but two wars, and they may be more connected than you think. As the conflict involving Iran spills across the Middle East, with dangerous escalations on all sides, the UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres will also join leaders to reflect on the mounting humanitarian crisis. The message from the summit, though, is clear. This is not Europe's war, but it is affecting us, whether we like it or not. From rising energy prices to the risk of food shortages all across Africa, the global impact is already being felt. Plus, EU leaders won't be forgetting Ukraine. Now, in its fifth year of war, the country is still waiting for a €1 billion loan. President Zelensky will join the talks remotely. For more, we can cross straight over to the arrival floor of the EU summit, where Euronews' correspondent Shona Murray is standing by for us this morning. Good morning, Shona. So we're hearing the EU saying it's not getting involved in the US-Israel war on Iran. But will leaders discuss any potential support today to allow the Strait of Hormuz to return to normality?
Well, good morning, Maeve, and we are shaping up for a very rancorous, a very difficult EU summit today. EU leaders will about to start trickling down the red carpet here over the next sort of half an hour or so for what will be a very late summit, which will probably drag in well into the early hours of the night. And as you mentioned there, two major items on the agenda. First of all, of course, the Iran war and the impact it's having on Europe. Now, EU leaders over the past few days have started roundly rejecting the premise of this war, saying that they weren't consulted, they're not party to the conflict, and therefore why should they get involved? Why should they send their vessels, their sailors, to help the Strait of Hormuz and the Americans and the Israelis? Take a listen to German Chancellor Friedrich Merz speaking to the Bundestag yesterday.
We have also made it clear that we still have many questions about this war. To date, there is no convincing concept of how this operation could succeed. Washington did not consult us and did not declare European aid necessary. Ladies and gentlemen, we would have advised against following this path, which is being currently taken.
So that's Friedrich Merz, the German Chancellor, obviously making the point that they don't understand the objectives of this war, they weren't consulted and they would have advised against it. And that's very interesting, Maeve, because you might recall a couple of weeks ago there was a lukewarm endorsement from a lot of Western countries, particularly some of the most senior countries in the European Union, aside from Spain, that said, look, let's not lecture our allies. This is a very important thing to do, potentially to rid the world of the regime in Tehran. But now they're also looking at the impact. The impact for European economies on this war is massive. We've seen oil prices skyrocket. The impact on the cost of living crisis is huge. But the key question is, will Europe do anything to save the Americans and the Iranians and the Israelis right now? Will they send their vessels, their sailors, to the Strait of Hormuz? We've heard over the past few days that this is a non-starter. There was even a discussion by the EU Foreign Policy Chief, Kaja Kallas, as to whether she could maybe do a negotiation with the Iranians to try to get European vessels through the Strait of Hormuz. And that, again, is a non-starter. But we've seen this war escalate over the past few days, in particular the world's largest gas field being hit by strikes yesterday. So EU leaders will definitely discuss the economic impact of this war. Maeve?
And just briefly, Shona, Ukraine also very much on the agenda.
Of course, yes. It's a major issue that will keep the EU leaders up at night. Viktor Orban, the Hungarian Prime Minister, has reneged on an agreement that was set before Christmas that he would endorse a €90 billion loan for Ukraine. He's now saying he won't do that because the Ukrainians are refusing, as he says, to fix the Druzhba pipeline, which is a pipeline that gets oil from Russia through Ukraine to Slovakia and Hungary. So that's going to be a major problem because Ukraine needs this money by June. Maeve?
Indeed. Shona Murray, thank you so much for that live update there from the EU summit. From an EU summit that once again could potentially be dominated by a veto by Viktor Orban, the Hungarian Prime Minister. For more, Euronews' Hungarian correspondent Sandor Zsiros is with me here on set. Good to see you, Sandor. Thank you so much for being here. And we understand the EU and Ukraine have sent a team of experts to this pipeline. Could this resolve now this issue of the veto at the EU summit?
Good morning, Maeve. Indeed, earlier this week, the European Commission decided to take action and try to resolve this issue. The group of experts are currently on the ground and they are expected to file a report pretty soon in order to see what does it cost and how much time it will take to repair this pipeline. But I guess this is not going to resolve the issue right now at this European summit, because Prime Minister Viktor Orban clearly said 2 days ago that in order to lift his veto and in order to finance Ukraine, he needs to get the oil flowing. And this, according to Ukraine, could take up to 1 month. So I expect a really tough summit for Viktor Orban, a lot of fighting, but I don't think there will be a solution for this loan of Ukraine, and there is not a plan B, so they cannot simply bypass Hungary on this.
And it's tricky, isn't it, for the EU? Because, of course, Hungary is a member state, Ukraine an aspiring member state. And also, very interestingly, we have to remind our viewers there's elections coming up on the 12th of April in Hungary. How is this issue of this kind of spat between Hungary and Ukraine playing out in the campaign, Shandor?
That's right. This is one of the main issues in the campaign debated right now, because, this is related to energy security. This is related to the price of the petrol, the price of the heating, cost of the living. So this is huge. And again, Prime Minister Orban is portraying himself as somebody who is fighting with Brussels, in Brussels for Hungary, and he's fighting also with Ukraine in order to secure cheap oil from Russia. This is a big issue, and according to experts that I spoke to, this could eventually help Orban boosting his support. And another thing is, since people are talking about Ukraine, they are not talking about the talking points of the opposition, which is, hospitals, schools, inflation, etc. And one final thing to remind, the elections are still open. Orban could win, but he could also lose. And if he's losing, this is his last European summit and possibly his last European veto as well.
As you said, Shandor, it will be a very tough summit. We'll keep a very close eye on it. Thank you so much for that update. And now, of course, although all eyes here in Brussels are focused on the politics coming out of that EU summit today, the eyes of the world are on the Middle East. In Lebanon, hundreds are reported killed and more than 1 million people displaced, and strikes are starting to hit energy infrastructure from Iran to Qatar. This as President Trump warned Iran not to attack Qatar again, or the US would, quote, massively blow up the entirety of an Iranian gas field. We can go to Dubai now, where our regional correspondent Jane Witherspoon is standing by for us. Good morning, Jane. So it's getting very ugly here and dangerous, with energy sites being struck on all sides. Tell us more.
That's right. Iran has ramped up its attacks on energy sites across the Middle East. It comes as the Revolutionary Guard has said this is a new era of war. Now, here in the UAE, our Habshan gas facility was closed overnight due to strikes there. We're hearing similar reports across the region in Riyadh, in Saudi Arabia. And of course, this morning we learned that several sites in Qatar, Doha, had been attacked, leading to extensive damage. Now, all three countries have come out and condemned these attacks, saying it could lead to global security issues. And of course, these do come off the back of Israel attacking that South Par in Iran, their largest gas field there. However, overnight as well, President Trump has come out and said he had no idea that these attacks were going to take place. He's condemned further attacks also on Iranian infrastructure.
And meanwhile, Jane, Iran's security chief, Ali Larijani, has been killed in an Israeli strike. He was actually one of the most influential figures of the regime. Tell us more about that and what it could mean.
Yes, now a lot of the top brass from that Iranian regime have been killed over the past few days. There's a statement out in the media in Iran today, supposedly from the supreme leader, Mojtaba Khamenei, saying that he condemns these killings. And as you say, his top security chief was just the latest to be taken out. So he's very angry about that. Now, amidst these strikes, which are consistent through the day and night across the region, we are hearing that the Iranian people are against the regime there, and they're now taking to the streets in protest, and they're coming up against security forces there.
OK, Jane Witherspoon. And of course, we have our Farsi desk all over that. Thank you so much for that live update there from the United Arab Emirates. Now back here in Brussels at the EU summit, EU leaders are looking at ways to soften the blow from the war in the Middle East and also manage the impact of the ongoing war in Ukraine, now entering its 5th year. Our Jakob Yanis takes a look at how both wars are very connected.
Today, 27 EU leaders meet in Brussels for the European Council. The official agenda highlights competitiveness and migration, but war overshadows it all. And your reporter doesn't yet know exactly what they will be saying, but we can certainly guess what keeps them up at night. Especially as Russia's war in Ukraine and the US-Israeli war in Iran have become deeply interlinked. Let's take a look together. With the Strait of Hormuz effectively closed, energy and petrol costs are soaring. And because that vital waterway handles a massive share of global fertilizer shipments, it also means higher grocery prices for everyone. To ease that pressure, Trump announced last week that he is lifting some sanctions on Russian oil. The US Treasury issued a temporary permit allowing countries to purchase Russian crude currently stranded at sea. And Washington insists this only applies to already loaded cargo, strictly ruling out new trades or major financial benefits for Russia. But European leaders are strongly pushing back. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz called the move wrong, while Council President Antonio Costa argued it directly undermines European security by letting Moscow cash in. But here is the bitter irony. Since Trump's decision, oil prices have not drastically fallen, but European security has. This sanctions relief could hand the Kremlin a staggering $150 million a day. That single day of revenue buys up to 7,000 Iranian-designed Shahed drones. Or could fund sign-up bonuses for 5,000 new Russian soldiers every single day. And after bashing traditional diplomacy, Trump is disappointed Europe is not rushing to help secure the Middle East. But as EU leaders gather in Brussels just days after the Ides of March, one could say they know a political backstabbing when they see one.
Jakob Yanis reporting for us there. Now, although only 27 EU leaders are in that summit physically today, some others are hoping to one day sit in there too. Like Iceland, who plan to hold a referendum on EU membership. For more, Euronews' Shona Murray sat down with the Foreign Minister of Iceland and started by asking her if this would be a very difficult referendum to get through.
Everyone knows about Brexit and all the lies that were put on the table in that process. So, yes, it will not be an easy walk, but in the end, you have to trust the nation and believe in her. And it's rather positive now. The outcome could be positive now, today, if we would vote. But on the other hand, it's just a simple question, Should we continue the negotiation talks, yes or no? And from my point of view, if you say no, you are closing a lot of doors. Instead of saying yes, should we not continue, see what kind of negotiation and agreement we will get. If you say no, then I'm afraid that Iceland will be pretty much alone. Not quite alone, but of course we are still member of NATO and we have the EA agreement, we have EFTA. But I think our position will be not so strong as being a member of the European Union. And there, again, I come to the values we share.
What do you make of the changing nature of the transatlantic relationship?
If I could now criticize European Union, is that they should be with more self-esteem. European Union is a superpower, and they should act like a superpower, if I could say so. And you just, if you watch and recall the Greenland's agenda from the US part, it was quite clear that the European Union was a backbone for Denmark and Greenland when these statements were made on the US behalf. And I think that was beneficial for Denmark, but it was also useful for us in Iceland to see, okay, European Union and most of the countries, they can stand with other nations when they are in a way attacked and their sovereignty
was that very worrying from an Icelandic point of view, what happened with Greenland? Because we're talking about two islands, and I mean, actually, Donald Trump kept on saying Iceland instead of Greenland in his speech in Davos.
Yeah, but he meant Greenland.
I know, but still, I mean, Iceland at the back of his head somewhere.
Yeah. somewhere, yes. But actually, just to underline, Iceland has an excellent relationship with the US.
Until it doesn't.
Yes, but you know, when it comes to defense and security, I just have to underline our cooperation in that field has been increasing and has been not just encouraging, you know, it has been very useful for Iceland, and I know as well for the US. So whatever people say, you know, in that field, defense and security, it's fine, and it's one of the most important pillars of our new defense and security policy. But when it comes to trade, sadly, their friendship is not so good as it was, you know, because we got first 15 and then now 10 after the decision from the Supreme Court. So I think, and Iceland, we are, and we still will be advocating for a good transatlantic relationship.
Of course, everybody is.
You know, yeah, but we also have to work for it, you know. But we cannot be naive. Yeah. And that's why I say it's important for Iceland to increase the pillars under the defense and security policy. Like I mentioned, there are two main pillars under our defense and security policy, being a member of NATO, and the other pillars is the defense agreement with the US since 1951. But of course we are having bilateral agreements with countries like Finland and Germany, and we are updating our memory of understanding and defense with Canada, and of course we are deepening our collaboration with other countries, and we have to do it because in this world, in this volatile world, you see what Finland and Sweden did. They joined NATO, and they say those two pillars, EU and NATO, they are the backbone of their security. And of course, we in Iceland, we have to do something more that we have been doing, and that's why for example, I signed this security and defense partnership with EU today. When you say the EU should be acting like a superpower, should it recognise the leverage that it has? I mean, if you look at what's happening in the Strait of Hormuz, humongous leverage, you know. So what would you say Ursula von der Leyen should have done, maybe around the issue of tariffs? Should the EU have played a tariff game with Trump or accepted the 15%? I will not tell them what to do. You know, it's a difficult situation. What I only ask for is in various areas, show your superpower, because together Europe is a strong alliance. I suppose did the example of Greenland. Yeah, exactly. For the example of Greenland, there some nations said, okay, if you are going to put tariffs on us because we are standing with Greenland and Denmark, then we are going to put tariffs on you. And of course it affected the markets in the US. And that's why one of the reasons that I think the US administration responded to.
Euronews' Shona Murray there is speaking to the Foreign Minister of Iceland. Now here on Euronews, our EU summit coverage is just getting started. Our reporters will be on the ground all day. We'll have a live blog all day and night. And tonight at 7, we'll be bringing you a very special live show from the summit floor hosted by our Maria Tadeo. So don't miss that. But for more on how the actual summit will unfold today, we can bring in briefly again our Shona Murray, who's on the arrivals floor for us. Anyone arrived yet, Shona? And how will the day proceed?
No one arrived yet, but as you can see, it's gotten much, much busier. EU leaders will start giving their statements to their press. They'll probably obviously highlight the Iran war, their concerns about the spillover. Key on the agenda for all of them will be to get the message across that they will try to do something about spiralling energy prices. The problem is that EU member states are not agreed about how the EU should proceed in this regard. Also, we'll have President Zelensky of Ukraine on video call. He will be putting his point across in relation to the €90 billion, but also how Ukraine can help support the West in tackling Shahed drones. So it's going to be a long day, it's going to be rankers, it's going to be difficult, and I'll probably see you here first thing in the morning in the same clothes like before.
You will indeed, and actually, Shona, this summit was meant to be about competitiveness, but interesting how things have changed. As I said, stay glued to Euronews.com and Euronews TV for more coverage of that summit. Thanks for watching, take care and see you soon.